The Premier League transfer window deadline is fast approaching as it cuts off on the 1st of September, which is next Monday. And as always, despite being an extended summer window, clubs are still rushing around at the last minute as always. So today we're going to go through each of the top six sides in the league, and we are going to determine who they absolutely need to get over the line in this final week. Let's kick things off. We'll do it in a nice, fair way. We'll do it in order of the league table. Reese, enjoy this moment while it lasts. We'll start with Arsenal, who are currently top of the table. Um, who is the major signing they need to get over the line this week, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a strange one for Arsenal because it's been pretty much perfection so far. Uh, 6 goals scored, 6 points received, and no goals conceded. Um, and let's be honest, they've spent and covered pretty much every aspect of the pitch, from Eze to Gyökeres, those players that they needed, Madueke as well for some extra wing depth. They've covered Zubimendi as well. They have covered a lot of positions, which makes Arsenal very well stacked. However, with outgoings expected, particularly in the left back position, they are going to have to look along those sides. And I think it's good to get a player who could play not only left back but right back as well. Um, I know that there's rumours of confirmations being confirmed with Bayer Leverkusen defender Hincapi. Sorry if I don't pronounce that properly. Um, that's the strong rumour. However, I think they should look closer to home. Um, the profile Arsenal have gone for looks like recently players are around what 27, 28, so in the peak of their powers. Um, and if the likes of Zinchenko are going to go, of course Tomiyasu is also gone. Lewis Skelly needs backup and he needs competition. In fact, not necessarily backup. I would just say competition in general if he wants to take his game to the next level. And also, is the pressure on his young shoulders? I would look across the capital and I would look towards Anthony Robinson at Fulham. 28 years old, peak of his powers, been at Fulham a long time. Admitted he's an Arsenal fan growing up. I suppose they all say that when they're linked to the club. I think he'd be perfect. I saw how he played. He's played against Arsenal over the last couple of years. I think he's been outstanding. He had Saka in his pocket quite a lot of the time over these games, both home and away. I would go for Anthony Robinson. I think he's the player that fits the profile we've got. The way he plays fits the profile as well. He's got that versatility to him, and he's got Premier League experience. He plays well against, the top six at the very least. I think he'd be perfect and he'll add, extra competition in the left back position, but also can help cover on the right if needed.
Yeah, I like it. I do like it. I think Robinson, I think he's a great player. As you said, we've seen the last couple of years, he's improving. He's slowly becoming one of the better wing backs in the league, I think. Defensive qualities, very attacking qualities. We know he can deliver the ball. Um, so yeah, I think that's quite a good move. Yes, Lewis Skelly is supposed to be the next thing since sliced bread in the eyes of Arsenal fans, but he is still young. He does still make mistakes, as we've seen with, a little bit of the odd red card or two. So I do think, yeah, Robinson would give him a good amount of competition. Both players would probably elevate their game as a result. So yeah, I think that's quite a good idea.
I think he was a top assister for a defender last year, or it was at least up there with it. I think he was top though, which shows even at Fulham he's very very attacking, which I think helps Arsenal, who are going to be more and more attacking. So I think it would be a good sort of position for Arsenal to sort of just go. That's cemented now. We've got sort of the players there. I know they've got Calafiori as well, but I think he should go more towards the centre. I think he's more of a centre back than a left back, in my opinion. So that's where I think that a sort of Anthony Robinson, I think, would be a decent signing. And because he is sort of, 27, 28, that means he's not there forever. And it means Lewis Skelly can take the role off him. So it's kind of, and he can fit in there now as well. Because at the moment, Arsenal need to try and win the league now. They're not doing a project that's similar to, say, Chelsea, where they want to like they're not looking at the younger players. Arsenal want to win the league now. That's why I'm saying Gyökeres. He's not someone for 10 years. He's someone for the next 3 or 4, maybe 5. And I think that's the same sort of Anthony Robinson fits that mould.
Yeah. And as we saw, Calafiori can get injuries. Lewis Skelly susceptible to a card or two. You know, he helps had that and he can help cover for Ben White. at right back as well if needs be. I just think he's a good fit. I just think it works. I think it makes sense. And like I said, it's probably the first time in many years Arsenal have had depth. If we're bringing someone off, we know that the person coming on is just as good, or if not, able to play that way. We're not going from a 10 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10 or anything like that. So that's what is important for me, I think.
All right, let's move on down the table. Spurs. Now, they've had a bit of a weird summer. Um, Obviously, new manager coming in, good performances in the Super Cup, but defeat. Great start to the league, but they've not had a great time in terms of squad and a window. Obviously, the injury that looks, the majority of the season for James Maddison, then the whole Gibbs White situation, kind of getting a bit mugged off, to be honest. It's very clear the position they need help in. We saw as well Nico Paz, that bid a little bit out of left field just 2 days ago be rejected. So Spurs are scrambling here, and I do think out of all these clubs, they probably are the most desperate to make a big name signing. And for me, the man that fits, I'm not saying it's realistic, but if they want to chuck 70, 80 mil down, which it looks like they've got the money to, for me, they've got to go for Morgan Rogers. I don't necessarily see Villa being willing to sell, given how Villa have started. But for Morgan Rogers, it feels like a move that he would welcome. It feels like a move where it is. I know you can look at Villa and say they've done well last few years, but it is still a step up, arguably, in terms of being a slightly bigger club. People might school me in the comments for that, but Morgan Rogers is honestly a phenomenal player. If I'm being honest, I want him at Chelsea, but it doesn't necessarily fit at the moment. But not only can he play in that central role, he can play wide. He's good for 90 minutes. He's got skill. He's got pace. He can finish. He's got it all. He's honestly one of my favourite players, and I think he would fit absolutely perfectly into Spurs' team right now. And as I said, would cost not far off what Spurs have shown they're willing to pay. We know they've got 70 mil ready to go. Give that as a starting bid and maybe end up around 75 mil. What do you guys think of that one?
Yeah, I would agree in this because I think, like I said before on the podcast, is Spurs didn't need major surgery this summer. It was just the way they played tactically in the injuries. They have brilliant squad on paper. As we've seen, the likes of Kevin Danso's been fantastic. Palinha's slotted right in. Richarlison's been great. In these two games. Thomas Frank's had a new lease of life out of him. I do think they just need a little bit more depth. That I think there's issues still maybe or ways to fix that defensively. But I think they're so organised, Spurs, they can afford to go for the attack. Maddison being injured for pretty much all season or the vast majority of is the key replacement. They've lost out on Eze, and before people jump at me, they didn't bottle that. As everything was already done, so to speak. Eze had already changed his mind or whatever, and they're right. Why should they go for a player that doesn't want to play for him? I think Morgan Rogers fits the profile of Tottenham perfectly. Young, hungry player, English international as well. He's quick, so he can play that attacking midfield role. He can play on that wing role. And even though, in what we saw at Villa, yes, he got, what was it, 8 goals in the Premier League last season. But his overall effectiveness to me, he gets you the goal in a 1-0 win. I bang on about that a lot, but so many clubs don't go for that type of player. He's that player for them. I think he'd be perfect. He's not as creative, maybe, as, say, James Maddison. Morgan Rogers isn't going to bang a free kick in, but I think he offers something different to what Spurs need. I think they've got players who can already fill that sort of role. I just think they need to make sure they're bulking the numbers up. And I think Morgan Rogers' all-round game is perfect for them. And he would provide a lot of goals himself and a lot of opportunities for that attack. Because as we've seen already, that attack is decent enough. But he'll give him a little bit more of an edge, I think.
Well, as someone who watched Spurs beat City on the weekend, their game plan is obviously pressing high, and I think Morgan Rogers definitely can do that. I watched him do it to City last year at Villa, and where we couldn't get a touch of the ball, it was them high pressing. So he would fit into sort of Thomas Frank's way of playing and being organised and sort of the pressing up the pitch, and then he pops up with goals. He will pop up with assists. I think, and he carries the ball pretty well, and I think that would be really good for Spurs to get them up to the pitch when they're playing sides who are more more park the bus sort of style, put 11 men behind the ball. He can get the ball forward and up the pitch and then pop up with a goal here or there. So I think it'd be actually a phenomenal kind of signing. I do kind of agree. I do think Villa wouldn't sell because they've sold Ramsey. If they hadn't, it's possible it could have happened. But yeah, I think Spurs should be looking for that signing. That'd be a really good signing for him.
Right, let's move on. Liverpool.
Yeah, so this one I think is kind of it's an obvious one. I know I'm going with quite an obvious one. They, I think they just need to replace the centre back with Kanate. I think if they get someone else there, I don't mind Kanate, but I don't think he's as good as what I think people thought he was. And his replacement is just Mark Gahey. He's been phenomenal for Palace for years, and he's looking like he could go for sort of. I'm hearing rumours of sort of 30, 35, 40 million. And for that price range, for how many games he's played in the Premier League, he'll fit in like a glove. I think at any sort of these sides at centre half, I think he'd fit in very very well. And I reckon he probably improves maybe 5 out of the 6. I think Saliba and Gabriel probably have a very good partnership, so maybe not there, but everyone else I think they do. So he would be a great signing and for not that expensive.
Yeah, I think it would be more than 40 mil, if I'm being honest. I'd be surprised if Palace sold under 50. But as we've seen, Liverpool have a blank checkbook this summer. So are they going to pay it? Probably, yeah. So, yeah, fairly obvious one. I think it makes sense for all parties. There is also arguments, Liverpool fans will hate me for saying it, that Van Dijk, maybe there's a little bit of a drop off. Some players can only be at that top level for so long. Maybe it's a bit premature after a couple of games, but
But it's also a
I don't know.
good longer term replacement for him because he's not going to play
Yeah,
forever, is he? So
no.
it fits into that role. If he can play alongside Van Dijk for a year or two, that perfectly fits well with him joining now. So I think it's right. He can replace Van Dijk as well.
Yeah. Reece, any thoughts on Gurhey?
No, I think as we know, Liverpool are going big this summer. They're not just, signing for big money. They're signing big name established players. I know that, of course, there's a certain player at Newcastle they're looking for that I think obviously would be stupid to not know that that's possible. But realistically, the start Ekitike is made and the attack they already have, do they need him? And with the money they'd spend on that, is that going to be money well spent when they need that backup at centre back? A lot of people criticised Konate last night. I still think he's a great centre back, but he's also prone to an injury. Virgil van Dijk, as you mentioned, isn't getting any younger. And then Joe Gomez as well also has his injury problems. So I sort of struggle to see who else at centre back they can probably fit in there. So they need to bring somebody in who's a ready-made replacement. And that person is Mark Gee. Um, he's in the last year of the contract, if I'm not mistaken. So his value is less. As we know, Palace sell when the price is right. I don't see them letting him go for free from a business standpoint. However, with them already losing Eze, do they want to lose their two best players? But again, as we've seen from Palace, they rebuild very well. I think they'd have to make sure their replacements in, and there's obviously all sorts of players they're linked there. But I think he'd be a good fit for Liverpool. Personally, I hope he stays at Palace from a selfish standpoint and from a stop selling to the your league rivals standpoint. But yeah, I think he's the perfect fit for what they need right here, right now.
All right, let's move on down the table to Chelsea. Again, a lot of people may disagree on this one, and maybe it's a bit boring because we've already been linked with him for the last 3 weeks, and Fabrizio's given us updates every day to say we're progressing. Xavi Simons is my pick. Yes, there's arguments. Maybe we need a centre back, but is there that many potentially world class centre backs in the market who are under the age of 23? I'm not sure. Um, so that's why I've avoided that. We've still got, as I said, we've still got Tosin, we've still got Chalabar. Um, Akama done really well when he's played. So there is other options. We've got Fafana as well, who's just come back from injury. So I don't think the centre back is as urgent as people are making out, personally, and I wouldn't overreact and just panic buy. Um, Xavi Simons, on the other hand, fits the model that we're going for. We are looking at young players who have world class potential at a reasonable price, and I think Simons is the answer to that. We know he's creative. We know he can attack. We know he can finish. We know he can link play. We know he can break down, deep defensive lines and low blocks, which is something we've struggled on. So I don't know where we are with this deal. It feels like we're waiting for Nkuku to leave to then sign him. Um, that's my impression that I get from this move. But for me, it would be a shame now to not get this done this week, given how long we've been linked with him and how much of a good fit it feels like.
I think the only problem, Jordan, he didn't come from City or any City academy. That's the only problem I think you've got with him in your transfer sort of plans. But I just not joking aside, sort of, I do think you need a Palmer replacement, and I think João Pedro was meant to be a sort of go between a striker and the sort of Palmer replacement when he can't play every single game. And he's picked up an injury already. I don't know how long he's out for. It might just be a week. He might be fine. I don't actually know. But he can't play every game. And I think because of the way Pedro started as up front and Jackson probably leaving, that then means you need to fill in the void there. And I think Simmons will fill that role in and fit to what Chelsea wants from him. He's not going to be as. I think he's not as good as Palmer. And so there will be a slight drop off, but I still think he's a very talented player. My only other question about him is he seems to be moving around several clubs already. Is he a bit of a problem player? I don't know. Like, this is all sort of just guesswork. That's the only small thing. And if you're a problem player and you're not playing every week, which I don't expect him to, he can then cause problems.
Yeah.
That's my sort of only hesitant on Chelsea signing him.
Yeah, I think on that, it depends on price. Like, I wouldn't necessarily be paying 70, 80 mil for him. I think that's a little bit steep. But if you can get him for 40 to 60 mil, I think he's 22 still. This is a guy a lot of clubs, Reece, I know you're touching it and saying, as Jamie said, maybe it's a concern, but the guy's 22. Like, we're not talking about a player who's 27, been to a load of top clubs, never worked out, like João Felix. You know what I mean? He just feels like a younger version of him with a lot more upside. Reece, where do you stand on Simmons?
Yeah, there's no doubt Simmons is a very talented footballer. He's proven that, and I think he's a good player. I think the issue with this signing at the moment is there's a lot of things that need to fall into place before it seems to happen. Um, you know, RB Leipzig have already lost Sesko this transfer window. Do they want to lose another key player? And also Chelsea also need to clear out as well. So I'm sure they'd like to offer a swap deal, which is good financially for both parties, probably. But does that player also want to go to Leipzig? And Kunku would make sense because that's where he's played before. Um, but that's the thing holding it up, I suppose. Whereas there are other players they could probably get quicker through the door. But I think it'd be a perfect signing. I wouldn't necessarily believe he'd be a like for like Palmer replacement, but I think he's got a lot of flair and a lot of creativity that maybe Palmer doesn't have. That's not a criticism of Palmer. I just think they're two different players in their personalities when it comes to the game. And I think if they need a player to, have that, I think he'd be perfect for them. A little bit of flair, a little bit of, not afraid to, he'll be targeted quite a lot. Got a bit of character about him. I do like that about Xavi Simons. I think he'd be the perfect signing. It's just getting everything else over the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's move on to Man City.
Yeah, so this one, I think, similar to what you were saying with Simmons, relies on someone else leaving. So for me, I'm going with Rodrigo as the sort of replacement for Savio Savino, however you want to sort of say it. And I sort of have reservations on it, but I don't see anyone else that I'd want to sign as the replacement of Rodrigo. it's going to cost a lot of money. They're talking sort of 100 million price tag. So it would depend on how much Savio would sell for. But it's also, there's a lot of talk of City are not letting Savio go, which sort of feels like it could be unrealistic. But I think Rodrigo should want to go to City because he's already being phased out at Real Madrid. All the sort of press sort of it comes out going how he doesn't want to leave Real Madrid, and I think that's fair if he was playing week in week out. But he's sort of he's not starting most games. I think he's didn't start any in the Club World Cup, and he's not started. I think he started one game in the league. He's the scapegoat of having Vinicius Junior, having Mbappe, having Gula. He's falling down the pecking order, so I think it would be still a really good move to go to City, who are still a top club. We're not as big as Real Madrid, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to ever claim that, but I think it would be. I think it'd work out well for him, and from what I'm reading, Pep really wants him. So I see it getting done if Savinho leaves, but I'm not sure he will. So that's my reservations on it.
Yeah, I think if you can get 70 mil for Savinho, then it makes sense because you're paying, 20 mil extra. I just, it's a tough one because you say 100 mil, like 100 mil, I think it's a horrible signing because yes, he's a good player, but as I said before, he plays 60 minutes a week. The guy's never played 90 minutes in his life, I don't think. He's fourth, fifth choice now. I like him, by the way. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but you're paying potentially a ridiculous fee at 100 mil for a player who can't play more than 70 minutes and is fifth choice, maybe fourth choice
I don't know if
at
that's
round
down to
three.
him playing 70 minutes. It's more the players that they've got at Real Madrid and you're not taking off Mbappe, you're not taking off Vinicius Junior. So he is the one who will always come off, if
But
that
you're
makes
almost
sense.
paying at 100
But
mil, you're almost
I
paying
understand what you're saying. It's a lot of money, and you'd want if you're
yeah,
paying 100 million, you want the superstar, you want the Mbappe, you want the
yeah,
Vinicius
yeah.
Junior. So I do get that point. City then, yeah, City paying 100 million for a fourth choice winger is does sound ridiculous when you put it like that.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, the minutes isn't a concern. Like if he goes to City, he's gonna do exactly the same. We know with Pep Roulette, we know the rotation. So the minutes is less of an issue, but I still think it's an important point to note. Um, Reese, how do you feel about this move if it does happen?
To me, Rodrigo's perfect for Man City. Look, he's won everything at Real Madrid that can be won. Is he going to be the poster boy of Real Madrid? No. Mbappe's there, for example, and obviously Bellingham is there as well. And I feel like he's one of those victims of one of those great sides where he could walk into any side in the world. It's just he's at Real Madrid where he's never going to be that guy, but he can walk to any other side in the world. And I think Man City have lacked a signing like this for a long time. Yes, they signed Haaland. That was a big thing a few years ago. But I think they need that fresh edge to them. You know, a real big name, a real established star. Yes, everyone's heard of Mamouche, etc., but he's not on that level of Rodrigo, right? I think he'd be perfect for Man City. I think he fits them tactically. I think he offers them a different edge in attack. I think he offers more options for Pep. Can't knock it. Simple as that.
All right. Last but not least, well, maybe least because they are currently bottom out of this list. Man United. Reese, what you got for us?
Yeah, what do you say about the team that have spent, about what, nearly £200 million in the market, gone all out in their attack with Sesko and Bemo and Cunha, and have still only scored one goal in two games, and that looked like it was an own goal yesterday. So, look, there's no doubt that United still need improving. I think they've helped close after that open heart surgery comment from Ranić. I think they've, zipped that up a little bit, so it looks like they're on the mend and in the repair. But as we saw in the first game of the season, why did they not take home at least a point? And I think it was quite safe to say it was because of a mistake from the goalkeeper. and that's where they need to strengthen. And my pick is I think they should go all out for Donnarumma. Look, I've said, there's a reason probably why PSG are letting him go, but United can't really be too picky in this market. The big signings they've made for their goalkeeper has not worked out. This goalkeeper, I can't pronounce his name, sorry, from Fenerbahce, hasn't worked out, but he looks like he's set on being a number two. I They've got to go for him. 6'6", he can catch the ball. I wouldn't worry about playing with his feet at this moment in time because they need somebody who can stop them going in the net. That goal, from Arsenal would not have happened if Donnarumma was in goal, in my opinion. That's why I think Donnarumma is the perfect pick for them at this moment in time, and at the price he will be. He will shore up that defense, and that will help add another piece of the puzzle for United. Still quite a long way to go from what we've seen so far, but add a, as we know, goalkeepers, attackers win your games, but I think goalkeepers, as they win your trophies near enough, or win you the 3 points at the very least. He would be my pick for United to go all out for in the last few days of the window. But what do you think, Jamie? City were linked with Donnarumma. Do you think he'd be an option for United?
I think if United can get him, they should just go yes. Just it doesn't matter what they want, say yes, because he's better than all of what they've got combined. It's I think as simple as that. You're signing the Champions League winning goalie for United. That's something you should take definitely at the moment. And yeah, I think you've seen it. No, there's no confidence in the goalie. If you're a United fan, you shouldn't be that confident in the goalie. And if you are, I think you're just a bit deluded, to be perfectly honest. However, I think it is kind of down to the feasibility because all the sort of stories that are coming out from your sort of Ornsteins, your Fabrizio Romanos, is he's basically waiting for Edison to leave City and he will be signing. They've sort of said everything's agreed. It's just once Edison's leaving. But if Edison doesn't leave, because there's no guarantee of that, he's then in limbo, and that's where United could actually quite easily go, we do want you. And United being the size of the club they are, it's still an attractive proposition to go there, even though they aren't the team that they once were. So I think it would work out if I think he chooses City over United, but I don't think it's not like he's turning. It's not like he's sniffing his nose up at United. So I think it would be a very good signing for him, but I don't see it happening personally. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's very simple. United should just don't speak and just pay the money. PSG can write it down on a tissue paper and put his wages on there and just pay whatever he wants. Onana, look, as good as he was at Inter Milan, Onana has been an absolute disgrace at Man United. And Bayender, apologies if I butcher that name, showed that he is maybe the same level as Onana. He drops the ball, he can't catch it. Their hands are made out of crisps. So Donnarumma, you just have to sign him. If City are messing around and waiting for Edison, pay the money, pay him a little bit more, pay a few £1 million more, and go. We want you, and just get it done. Do what Arsenal did with Eze. It's exactly the same situation. If they want to compete, they have to do it because it's very clear their keepers are
It
not good enough.
is easier said than done, isn't it? I mean, like they could offer how much they want, but if he doesn't want to join them, he won't. I do think you can get good quality goalkeepers for a good price. Look at Edison. Not many people have heard of Edison. Allison we'd heard of, but do you know what I mean? I think you can get good quality goalkeepers for reasonable prices. I know Allison was expensive, so maybe I'm just sounding like an idiot with that, but I think you can get a decent keeper on the market these days. Anyway, but
Their scouting has not been great, is it? United. They're not a team who's going to pluck a guy with potential and turn him into a superstar. Doesn't seem to be their model anymore. So yeah, I think they desperately need a player like Donnarumma, and they should just pay the man what he wants. All right, well that's all we got time for. There we go. We've stated how much how much and what players the top six should sign this week. But are we right? Is there any players we missed? If so, hit us up down below. But as always, Like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.